Alarms tore through the council chamber before the vote was even finished. I was not there. Nobody from Earth was there. But I have read the transcripts so many times that I can still hear the pounding gavel of stone against stone, still feel the weight of a decision made about my entire species without a single human voice allowed to speak. The chamber belonged to the Great Coalition, a union of 11 star-faring peoples who had ruled the galaxy for longer than human history had existed. They called their meeting a judgment. They called Earth a problem. A representative with silver skin and a voice like grinding metal stood before the others and read our file aloud. Endless wars, endless weapons, a species that had split the atom and pointed it at itself before it ever pointed a telescope at the stars. A species that could not be trusted to grow up quietly the way every other race in the coalition had been required to grow up. The vote took 4 minutes. Earth lost by a wide margin. A fleet was already waiting near the edge of our solar system, hidden behind the dark curve of a dead comet, ready to carry out the ruling the moment it was signed. Their orders were simple: locate the primary population centers, remove the threat, leave nothing behind that could grow back. I did not know any of this when it happened. None of us did. We were living ordinary lives, going to work, raising children, arguing about small things that felt important at the time. My name is Daniel Cole, and 3 years before that judgment was passed, I was recruited into a program so secret that even my own family believed I worked at a communications company in orbit. The truth was very different. Decades earlier, long before I was old enough to understand what was happening around me, a research station on the far side of the moon picked up something that should not have existed. A signal. Not random noise from a dying star, but a structured pulse, deliberate and precise, sweeping past our system like a searchlight. It was gone within hours, but the engineers who studied it understood immediately that we were not alone, and worse, that whoever was out there had technology far beyond ours. Governments argued for years about what to do. Some wanted to broadcast peaceful greetings into the void. Others wanted to stay silent and hope no one had noticed us. But a small group of scientists and military planners believed something the others refused to accept. If a civilization out there ever decided humanity was a threat, no peaceful greeting would save us. So while diplomats debated, a quiet project began in secret, buried under budgets nobody questioned, and facilities disguised as ordinary satellites. We called it the Deadlock Program. I was pulled from flight school without much explanation, given new papers, and flown to a station orbiting Jupiter that officially did not exist. There, for years, I trained alongside people from every corner of Earth. Pilots from small farming towns, engineers who had grown up with nothing, soldiers who had seen every kind of conflict our own world could produce. We built warships unlike anything Earth had ever attempted, vessels shaped less like graceful starcraft and more like clenched fists, covered in plating meant to survive impossible pressures, armed with weapons designed by people who understood, deep in their bones, that surviving a fight sometimes matters more than fighting fair. We trained for an enemy we had never seen, based on nothing but guesses and a handful of decoded fragments from that old signal. Some nights I lay awake, wondering if we were preparing for nothing at all, if the fleet forming quietly around Jupiter's shadow was destined to gather dust in some forgotten hangar while the years passed and nobody ever came. Then came the morning everything changed. I was running a diagnostic check on my ship when Commander Owen Price burst into the hangar bay, his face pale in a way I had never seen before. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The silence that followed his words was louder than any alarm. They found something entering the system, he said. Something big. It is not one of ours. Within minutes, every screen on the station lit up with the same image. A cluster of alien vessels, sleek and curved like the inside of a shell, moving through the outer edge of our solar system with the calm confidence of a fleet that expected no resistance whatsoever. Our long-range sensors struggled to process their size. They were enormous, built by a civilization that clearly did not fear anything it might encounter. I remember Captain Laura Bennett standing at the command platform, watching the same feed as the rest of us, her jaw tight, her eyes narrow with something between fear and cold focus. She had commanded soldiers on Earth before joining this program, had seen conflict most of us in the room had only read about in history books. If anyone understood what was coming, it was her. "They are not hiding," she said quietly. "They do not think they need to." The alien fleet continued its slow approach, gliding past the outer planets as though our entire solar system belonged to them already. Sensors picked up strange transmissions sweeping ahead of the ships, some kind of signal broadcast toward Earth itself, though we had no way yet to translate it. Later we would learn it was not a greeting. It was a formality, a final notice sent moments before judgment was carried out, a courtesy extended only because their laws required it, not because they expected an answer. Every person on that station understood, in that single moment, that the years of secret training were no longer theoretical. The enemy we had built ourselves to fight was finally here, and it had not come to talk. Captain Bennett turned from the screen and looked across the command deck at all of us gathered there, waiting. "This is not a drill," she said. "This is not a test. Everything we trained for begins now." I felt my hands tighten on the edge of my console, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the low hum of the station's engines. Around me, pilots and engineers, who had spent years preparing for an enemy without a face, finally understood that the wait was over. Commander Price moved quickly across the deck, calling out coordinates, confirming ship readiness, requesting status from every vessel docked along our hidden fleet line. His voice cracked with urgency, but never with fear. That steadiness alone helped calm the room. "All deadlock vessels, prepare for immediate launch," he called out. "This is what we built for." I looked out through the viewport toward the black curve of space where our hangar bay opened into the void. Somewhere out there, drifting silently past Jupiter's shadow, our small fleet of warships sat ready, engines cold, weapons untested in true conflict, crewed by people who had trained endlessly but never truly faced what waited for them now. The alien fleet continued its advance, unaware that anything stood between them and the destruction they had been sent to deliver. They believed, as their entire civilization believed, that Earth was defenseless. They believed history would remember this as another quiet ending to another troublesome species. They had no idea that humanity had spent decades quietly preparing exactly for this moment. As I strapped into my ship and felt the engines hum to life beneath me, I thought of every person on the surface of Earth who had no idea what was approaching, who were living their lives completely unaware that their entire future rested on ships built in secret, crewed by strangers, hidden in the shadow of a planet none of them would ever visit. Captain Bennett's voice came through my headset, calm and steady despite everything. "Launch sequence beginning in 60 seconds, she said. "Whatever happens next, remember why we are here." I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breath, and thought of home. Then I opened them again, and watched the stars shift as my ship began to move. The fleet the galaxy had sent to end us was about to meet the one thing it never expected, a species that had spent its entire history preparing for exactly this kind of moment, and had quietly built something the rest of the galaxy knew nothing about. We were no longer waiting. We were coming. My ship's engines roared to life beneath me as the launch bay doors slid open, revealing the endless dark of space stretched out ahead. Every muscle in my body was tense, my hands steady on the controls even though my heart pounded against my ribs. Around me, dozens of deadlock warships began pulling away from the station, forming into tight formations we had rehearsed 1,000 times in simulations but never once under real conditions. Commander Price's voice crackled through my headset, sharp and clear despite the chaos building around us. "Formation Kestrel, hold your positions until my signal," he said. "Do not engage until they are within our defensive perimeter." I glanced at my display, watching the alien fleet's projected path stretch across the screen like a slow-moving shadow. They were still advancing with the same unhurried confidence, completely unaware that anything stood between them and Earth. Our sensors placed their lead vessel at a size that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, easily 10 times the length of my own ship, its hull covered in strange curved plating that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light around it. Grace Milton's voice came through next, steady despite the tremor I could hear underneath it. She flew the ship beside mine and had been my closest friend since the earliest days of training. "Daniel, do you see their formation?" she asked. "It is nothing like what we practiced against in the simulations." I looked closer at the data streaming across my console. She was right. The alien ships moved with a strange, almost lazy spacing between them, nothing like the tight defensive clusters our own tacticians had predicted. It was the formation of a fleet that had never once needed to defend itself, a fleet built entirely around offense because nothing before us had ever fought back. "That is good for us," I said, trying to sound more certain than I felt. "They are not expecting resistance." Commander Price's voice returned, cutting through the quiet tension building across the comm channels. "All ships, hold silent running until the signal fleet is inside Marker 7, he ordered. "We only get one chance at surprise. Do not waste it." The minutes that followed felt longer than any training exercise I had ever endured. I watched the alien fleet grow larger and larger across my display, their massive shapes sliding past the orbit of the outer planets with slow, deliberate movement. Their scanners swept space around them constantly, searching for any sign of resistance, yet somehow failing to detect the small, cold, silent shapes of our own fleet drifting in the shadows nearby. It was Captain Bennett who gave the order that changed everything. "All deadlock ships, engage," she said, her voice steady and clear across every channel. "For Earth." The response was immediate. Every ship in our formation surged forward at once, breaking from stealth and lighting up the darkness with engine trails as we closed the distance toward the alien fleet. I pushed my ship into a tight spiraling approach, weapons systems arming as targeting locks began flashing across my display. The first alien scout ship never saw us coming. Our combined weapons fire struck it before its shields could even fully engage, and within seconds, it broke apart in a bright flash against the black backdrop of space. Cheers rang out across the comm channels, quickly cut short as the rest of the fleet reacted. The alien formation scattered in visible confusion, ships turning and repositioning with none of the practiced precision I expected from a civilization so advanced. It became clear very quickly that they had never trained for an enemy who fought back, let alone one who fought without hesitation. "Daniel, on your left," Grace called out suddenly. I banked hard just as a beam of energy sliced through the space where my ship had been a moment earlier. My heart slammed against my chest as I spun my vessel around, bringing my weapons to bear on the alien fighter that had fired at me. It moved with strange, jerking motions, clearly still adjusting to the idea that its target could dodge. I fired twice, and the alien fighter spun away trailing smoke before disappearing in a final burst of light. Around me, the battle unfolded in chaotic bursts of motion and light. Our smaller, more maneuverable ships darted between the alien vessels, striking at weak points our engineers had identified through years of studying that ancient signal fragment. Larger deadlock cruisers unleashed coordinated volleys that tore through alien shielding technology, clearly never designed to withstand focused, repeated strikes from multiple directions at once. Commander Price's voice rang out again, urgent but controlled. "Their command ship is trying to retreat," he said. "Do not let it escape. If it warns the rest of their fleet, we lose our only advantage." I pulled my ship into a tight turn, joining 3 others, as we raced toward the alien command vessel, attempting to pull away from the fighting. It was larger than anything else in their formation, its hull glowing faintly with some kind of defensive energy field. Our combined fire hammered against that shield again and again, each strike weakening it further, until finally, with one final coordinated volley, it shattered entirely. The command ship's engines flared briefly as it tried to jump away, but it was too late. A final strike from one of our cruisers tore through its main hull, and the vessel broke apart in eerie silence, debris scattering outward in every direction. Silence followed for several long seconds across every comm channel, broken only by the sound of my own breathing. Then Captain Bennett's voice returned, calm but heavy with meaning. "Enemy scout fleet neutralized," she said. "All ships, report status and prepare for what comes next." This was only their first probe. The real fleet is still out there. Around me, ships began calling in one by one, confirming they had survived the encounter with only minor damage. Grace's ship pulled alongside mine, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "We actually did it," she said. "We stopped them." I stared out at the drifting wreckage of the alien scout fleet, the first real proof that humanity's decades of secret preparation had not been wasted. But even as relief washed over me, a colder thought settled in beside it. This had only been a scouting force, a small fraction of whatever waited beyond the edge of our solar system. Somewhere out there, the true fleet of the coalition was already receiving reports of what had happened here, and I understood, with complete certainty, that whatever came next would be far larger, far angrier, and far more prepared for the resistance they never expected to find. Commander Price's voice returned once more, quieter now, almost thoughtful. "They came here believing we were nothing," he said. "Now they know the truth. The question is whether they retreat, or whether they come back with everything they have." I looked out at the stars stretching endlessly beyond my viewport, thinking of the countless unaware people living their lives on the surface of Earth below, completely unaware of how close they had just come to losing everything. We had won the first battle, but deep down I understood that this had only been the beginning. Within hours, sensors across our fleet detected new activity at the very edge of the solar system, far beyond where the scout fleet had first appeared. A second signal, larger and far more powerful than anything we had detected before, began sweeping slowly across space, moving steadily in our direction. Captain Bennett studied the readings with a grim expression, her voice quiet as she addressed the fleet. "They already know," she said, "and they are not sending scouts this time." I felt a cold weight settle into my chest as I stared at the growing cluster of alien signatures appearing across our long-range sensors. Whatever we had just survived was only a small taste of what remained beyond our solar system's edge, gathering itself for a response far greater than anything we had yet faced. Grace's voice came through quietly, steady despite the fear I could hear hidden beneath it. "How many ships do you think are coming?" she asked. I did not have an answer. None of us did. All we could do was prepare, repair our ships as quickly as possible, and ready ourselves for whatever the galaxy intended to send against us next. The first battle had ended in our favor, but somewhere out in the vast darkness beyond our solar system, an ancient and powerful civilization was gathering its true strength, preparing to answer humanity's unexpected resistance with everything it had. 3 days passed before the second fleet arrived, and every hour of that waiting felt heavier than the last. Repair crews worked around the clock, patching hulls and rearming weapon systems, while engineers pushed themselves to exhaustion, trying to squeeze every possible advantage out of ships that had already proven themselves once. I barely slept, spending most of my time either in the cockpit running diagnostics or in the briefing room studying the growing cluster of alien signatures our sensors continued to track. Commander Price gathered every pilot and officer into the main briefing hall on the third day, his face drawn tight with the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too much responsibility for too long. Behind him, a massive display showed the incoming alien formation in full detail for the first time. "This is not a scouting fleet," he said. "Long-range analysis puts their numbers at nearly 60 vessels, several of them significantly larger than anything we destroyed 3 days ago. They are not here to test us anymore. They are here to finish what they started." A murmur passed through the room, quickly silenced when Captain Bennett stepped forward. She had a way of commanding attention without ever raising her voice, simply through the steady certainty in her expression. "They believe our first victory was luck," she said. "They believe a larger, more disciplined fleet will correct that mistake. We are going to prove them wrong again, but this time we cannot rely on surprise. They know we are here. We need to rely on something else instead." She turned toward the display, highlighting several key areas across the alien formation. Our engineers have identified patterns in their fleet structure, she continued. Their ships rely heavily on centralized coordination through their larger command vessels. If we can disrupt that coordination early, their smaller ships will struggle to adapt. They are not built for chaos. We are. I felt a strange mixture of fear and determination settle over the room as pilots exchanged glances, understanding the scale of what was coming. This would not be a quick skirmish against an unprepared scouting party. This would be a sustained battle against a fleet built specifically to crush any resistance we managed to organize. Grace found me afterward in the corridor outside the briefing hall, her expression tight with worry she was trying hard to hide. 60 ships, she said quietly. We have 32. I know, I said, but they still do not understand how we fight. That is still our advantage. She managed a small, tired smile, though it did not fully reach her eyes. Let us hope that is enough, she said. The following hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Engineers loaded our smaller strike craft with modified explosive drones designed to overload alien shielding systems at close range, a tactic our own scientists had developed after studying wreckage from the earlier battle. Larger cruisers repositioned themselves along key defensive points near the outer edge of our solar system, forming a loose net designed to funnel the alien fleet into position rather than meet them head-on in open space. I sat in my cockpit long before the alien fleet came into visual range, running through simulations again and again, trying to steady my nerves through repetition. Beside me, my ship's onboard systems hummed quietly, weapons already primed, engines idling in standby mode. Commander Price's voice broke through the silence over the comm channel, calm but carrying an edge of tension none of us could ignore. All ships, hold formation, he said. They are entering range now. I looked out through my viewport and felt my breath catch in my throat. The alien fleet stretched across the darkness ahead of us like an enormous wall, their massive capital ships surrounded by swarms of smaller support vessels, all moving with slow, disciplined precision, completely unlike the confused scattering we had seen from their scouts. Captain Bennett's voice came through steady and clear. Remember your training, she said. Remember why we are here. All ships, engage on my mark. The silence that followed stretched for what felt like an eternity, though it likely lasted only a few seconds. Then her voice returned, sharp and final. Mark. Our fleet surged forward in a coordinated wave, smaller strike craft breaking away from the main formation to loop around the flanks of the alien fleet, while our larger cruisers advanced directly toward their center. I pushed my ship into a tight spiraling pattern, weapons locking onto one of the smaller alien support vessels as it turned to intercept. The battle that followed was unlike anything I had trained for. The alien fleet responded with far greater discipline than their scouts had shown, their ships adjusting formation smoothly to counter our initial approach. Beams of energy crisscrossed the darkness around me as I weaved between incoming fire, returning shots whenever an opening presented itself. Daniel, watch your six, Grace's voice cut through the chaos. I rolled my ship sharply, just as an alien fighter swept past where I had been a moment earlier, its weapons cutting through empty space. I spun around and fired twice, catching it along its rear thrusters. It spiraled away, trailing sparks before disappearing behind a nearby debris field. Around me, the battle grew more intense by the second. Our modified strike craft darted close to several of the larger alien cruisers, releasing clusters of small drones that latched onto their hulls before detonating in bright, controlled bursts designed specifically to overload their shielding systems. It worked exactly as our engineers had hoped. Alien ships that had seemed nearly untouchable during the previous battle began flickering as their defenses failed, exposing weak points our larger cruisers immediately exploited with focused, repeated strikes. Commander Price's voice rang out over the growing chaos. Their command vessel is adjusting formation, he said. They are trying to encircle our left flank. All available ships, converge and break their approach. I banked hard, joining a cluster of strike craft racing to intercept the alien maneuver. The formation ahead of us shifted unpredictably, alien ships breaking pattern in ways that suggested confusion rather than coordinated strategy. It became clear, even in the middle of chaos, that our unconventional tactics were forcing them to abandon the rigid discipline they clearly relied upon. "They do not know how to handle unpredictability," Grace called out, her voice tight with focus. "Keep breaking pattern. Do not give them a rhythm to follow." We pushed harder into the gap forming along their flank, weapons fire tearing through their disrupted formation. One of their larger support cruisers, caught off guard by our sudden change in approach, took a direct hit along its main engine section and began drifting uncontrollably, venting atmosphere into the surrounding darkness. Despite the small victories accumulating around us, the battle remained far from decided. Several of our own ships had already taken serious damage, and I caught brief, painful glimpses of wreckage that I knew belonged to pilots I had trained alongside for years. There was no time to process the loss in the moment. There was only the next maneuver, the next target, the next desperate push to hold our formation together. Captain Bennett's voice returned, steady despite the growing intensity of the battle unfolding around her own ship. "Their main command vessel is exposed," she said. "If we can disable it, the rest of their fleet may lose coordination entirely. All cruisers, converge on my position." I redirected my ship toward the coordinates she provided, weaving through scattered wreckage and ongoing skirmishes as I approached the massive alien command vessel at the heart of their formation. Its hull glowed faintly with layers of defensive shielding, clearly far stronger than anything we had faced from their smaller support ships. Our combined fleet converged around the vessel from multiple directions, weapons fire concentrating against its shields in overlapping waves designed to overwhelm rather than simply damage. For several long, tense minutes, the shield held steady despite the sustained assault, its defensive systems clearly built to withstand exactly this kind of coordinated attack. Then Commander Price's voice cut through the tension, urgent and sharp. "Divert power to forward weapons, all ships, now," he ordered. I felt my ship shudder as its systems redirected additional power into my forward weapons array, joining dozens of other ships doing the same. The combined volley that followed struck the alien command vessel's shields with enough force to finally overwhelm them entirely, the protective barrier shattering in a brilliant flash of light. Without its shields, the massive vessel became vulnerable in ways it clearly never expected. Our fleet pressed the advantage immediately, concentrated fire tearing through its exposed hull sections. Explosions bloomed along its surface as internal systems began failing under the sustained assault. Then, almost as suddenly as the battle had begun, something remarkable happened. The remaining alien ships, no longer receiving coordinated instructions from their crippled command vessel, began breaking formation entirely, some retreating outright, while others drifted in visible confusion, clearly uncertain how to proceed without centralized guidance. Captain Bennett's voice rang out across every channel, filled with a mixture of exhaustion and quiet triumph. "Their fleet is breaking apart," she said. "Continue pressing the advantage. Do not let them regroup." Our remaining ships pushed forward, picking off scattered alien vessels one by one as their formation continued to collapse into disorganized retreat. Within the hour, the once mighty punitive fleet that had arrived with such disciplined confidence was reduced to a scattering of retreating survivors, fleeing back toward the edge of our solar system in clear disarray. As the fighting finally quieted, I allowed myself a long, shaking breath, my hands trembling slightly against my ship's controls. Around me, the debris of both fleets drifted silently through space, a stark reminder of exactly how close this battle had come to going the other way. Grace's voice came through quietly, her tone heavy with a mixture of relief and grief. "We lost people today," she said. "Good people." "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But we actually held against everything they sent." Commander Price's voice returned a moment later, quieter now, carrying the weight of everything that had just happened. "All ships, report status and begin recovery operations immediately," he said. "We honor our losses by making sure they were not in vain." As recovery crews began the difficult work of searching the wreckage for survivors, I found myself staring out at the drifting remains of the alien command vessel, still glowing faintly from the destruction inside it. For the first time since this entire nightmare began, I allowed myself to consider the full weight of what we had just proven. Twice now, an ancient and powerful civilization had sent its ships against us expecting an easy victory. Twice now, they had been forced into retreat by a species they had judged too dangerous to be allowed to exist. But even as relief settled over our exhausted fleet, I understood that this would not be the end. A civilization proud enough to condemn an entire species without hesitation would not simply accept two humiliating defeats. Somewhere out among the stars, word of what had happened here was already spreading, and I feared deeply what kind of response it would provoke next. Captain Bennett gathered the surviving officers together once recovery operations were underway, her expression heavy with exhaustion but her voice still carrying the quiet strength that had guided us through everything so far. "We have won 2 battles," she said, "but I do not believe for a moment that this is over. Whatever comes next will be larger, and it will be angrier. Rest while you can. I do not believe we have much time before they return with everything they truly have." I looked out at the vast darkness surrounding our battered but victorious fleet, thinking of everyone back on Earth who still had no idea how close they had come to losing everything, twice now, in the span of a single week. Somewhere out there, an entire galaxy was reconsidering everything it thought it understood about the small, stubborn species it had once judged too dangerous to be allowed to live. I did not yet know how right Captain Bennett's warning would prove to be, or how much more we would all be asked to give before this war finally reached its end. 2 weeks passed before the true weight of the coalition's anger arrived, and in that time, our fleet worked harder than I had ever seen any group of people work. Every ship that could be repaired was repaired. Every reserve vessel hidden away in shipyards across Earth's orbit was brought forward and crewed with pilots and engineers who had trained for years without ever expecting to see real combat. Word had finally reached the surface of Earth about what had happened above their heads, and though panic spread quickly through many cities, something unexpected happened alongside it. People began volunteering in numbers no one had predicted, understanding at last that the quiet secrecy of the past decades had been the very thing protecting them all along. Commander Price called us together on the morning our long-range sensors detected the new fleet forming at the edge of the system, and I will never forget the look on his face as he addressed the room. "This is not 60 ships," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of the numbers displayed behind him. "This is closer to 400. They are not sending a punishment fleet anymore. They are sending everything they believe necessary to make absolutely certain this ends in their favor." The room fell into a silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. 400 ships was a number none of us had truly prepared for, a force clearly assembled not to test us, but to erase any possibility of failure entirely. Captain Bennett stepped forward, her expression calm despite the impossible odds displayed behind her. "We have 61 ships ready for combat," she said. "We cannot win this through strength alone. We will win it, if we win it at all, through everything that makes us different from them." She turned toward the display, highlighting several new tactical plans our engineers and strategists had spent the past 2 weeks developing, based on everything we had learned from the previous battles. "They rely on discipline and centralized control," she continued. "We rely on adaptability and the willingness to take risks their culture does not allow. We are going to use every advantage that gives us, because it is the only advantage we have left." The following hours passed in a haze of final preparations. Quiet goodbyes exchanged between crew members, who understood, without needing to say it aloud, that this battle would ask more of us than either battle before it. I found myself standing beside Grace near the hangar bay, both of us staring out at the distant lights of the approaching alien fleet, still hours away but growing more visible by the minute. "Whatever happens today," she said quietly, "I am glad it was you flying beside me through all of this." I reached over and squeezed her hand briefly, unable to find words that felt adequate for the moment. "We are going to make it through this," I said, though even as I spoke the words, I was not entirely certain I believed them. Commander Price's voice broke through our quiet moment, calling every pilot back to their ships as the alien fleet finally entered engagement range. I climbed into my cockpit and felt the familiar hum of my ship's systems coming online around me, though this time the feeling carried a heaviness I had not experienced during the previous battles. Captain Bennett's voice came through steady and clear across every channel as the massive alien formation stretched out before us, filling nearly the entire visible horizon of space. "All ships, hold position," she said. "We let them come to us. We funnel them through the corridor our engineers prepared, and we make every single shot count." The alien fleet advanced with terrifying discipline, hundreds of ships moving in perfect coordination, clearly confident that sheer numbers alone would finally settle the matter their previous fleets had failed to resolve. I watched the formation grow larger and larger across my display, my hands tightening against the controls as the moment of engagement drew closer. "Mark," Captain Bennett finally called out. Our fleet surged forward, smaller strike craft peeling away toward pre-designated positions along a narrow debris corridor our engineers had spent the past 2 weeks reinforcing with hidden explosive charges and disabled decoy ships designed to appear as easy targets. Larger cruisers held back near the corridor's exit, weapons primed and waiting. The alien fleet, confident in its overwhelming numbers, advanced directly into the corridor exactly as we had hoped. As their lead formations passed the hidden charges positioned along the debris field, Commander Price gave the order. "Detonate," he called out. A series of massive explosions ripped through the alien formation, catching dozens of ships completely off guard as debris and shockwaves tore through their tightly packed ranks. Confusion spread rapidly through their fleet as ships scattered to avoid the sudden chaos, breaking apart the disciplined formation they had relied upon for their entire approach. Our strike craft moved immediately, capitalizing on the confusion with the same unpredictable, aggressive tactics that had won us the previous 2 battles. I pushed my ship into the heart of the chaos, weapons locking onto a cluster of alien fighters attempting to reorganize themselves. Around me, the battle exploded into full intensity. Beams of energy crisscrossed the darkness in every direction as our smaller ships darted between the much larger alien vessels, striking at weak points while avoiding direct confrontation with their more powerful weapons. Despite the initial success of our ambush, the sheer scale of the alien fleet quickly became apparent as more and more ships pushed through the corridor, adapting to our tactics far faster than their previous fleets had managed. Grace's voice came through sharply, tension clear in every word. "Daniel, they are learning," she said. "Their formations are adjusting. We need to keep moving, keep breaking pattern." I understood exactly what she meant. Unlike the previous battles, this fleet seemed to be adapting in real time, alien commanders clearly having studied every recording and report from our earlier victories. Their ships began spreading out more effectively, reducing the impact of our unpredictable tactics with each passing minute. Commander Price's voice rang out, urgent and strained. "Their secondary fleet is flanking our southern position," he said. "We need reinforcements there immediately, or we risk losing that entire section of our formation." I banked hard, redirecting toward the coordinates he provided alongside a handful of other nearby ships. The scene that greeted us as we arrived filled me with a cold, sinking dread. A cluster of our cruisers were surrounded on multiple sides, their shields flickering under the sustained assault of dozens of alien fighters, pressing the advantage with newfound coordination. We pushed into the fight immediately, weapons fire tearing into the alien formation from an unexpected angle. For several tense minutes, the battle hung in painful uncertainty, neither side gaining clear advantage as ships on both sides continued to fall. It was during this chaos that I heard Grace's voice cut through the channel, tight with sudden alarm. "Daniel, I am taking heavy fire," she said. "My shields are failing." My heart lurched painfully as I turned my ship toward her position, weaving through the chaos as quickly as I could manage. I arrived just in time to see 3 alien fighters converging on her ship, their combined weapons fire tearing through what remained of her failing shields. I fired everything I had toward the nearest fighter, forcing it to break away just as Grace's ship shuddered violently under another direct hit. Her voice came through the comm channel, strained but steady. "I am still here," she said. "Systems are damaged but functional. Keep pushing them back." Relief flooded through me as I positioned myself protectively alongside her damaged ship, the two of us working together to hold off the remaining fighters until reinforcements finally arrived. Elsewhere across the battlefield, the fighting continued to rage with terrible intensity. I later learned that Peter Hall, one of our fleet's most respected engineers, who had insisted on joining the battle himself, despite his role primarily involving ship maintenance, was lost defending a group of damaged cruisers attempting to retreat from an overwhelming assault. The news hit our entire fleet hard, a painful reminder of exactly how much this battle was costing us with every passing minute. Captain Bennett's voice returned across every channel, heavier now, carrying the weight of every loss our fleet had suffered throughout the ongoing battle. "I know what this is costing us," she said. "I know every single loss weighs on all of us, but we cannot stop now. Their fleet is stretched thin trying to adapt to our tactics. If we press forward, if we push everything we have left into their center formation, we can still break them." Her words settled over the fleet with a strange, quiet determination, replacing exhaustion and grief with renewed focus. I looked toward Grace's damaged but still functional ship beside mine, and something inside me hardened with fresh resolve. "For Peter," I said quietly over our private channel. "For everyone we have lost today." Grace's voice returned, steady despite everything. "For all of them," she agreed. Commander Price coordinated one final, desperate push toward the alien fleet's weakened center formation, gathering every remaining ship capable of combat into a single, focused assault. I felt my ship shudder as it absorbed glancing hits from scattered alien fire, pushing forward alongside dozens of other battered but determined vessels. The alien fleet, already stretched thin from adapting to our unpredictable tactics throughout the battle, struggled to reorganize quickly enough to counter our final concentrated assault. Their center formation, weakened by hours of continuous fighting, finally began to buckle under the combined weight of our remaining fleet's desperate final push. Captain Bennett's voice rang out one final time, filled with exhausted but unmistakable triumph. "Their fleet is breaking," she said. "Continue pressing forward. We finish this now." As the alien formation finally collapsed into full retreat, scattering back toward the edge of our solar system in clear disarray, I allowed myself, for the first time since the battle began, to believe that we had actually survived what should have been an impossible fight. The cost had been enormous. Dozens of ships lost, dozens of pilots and engineers who would never return home, their sacrifice woven permanently into the story of humanity's improbable survival. But as the last of the alien fleet retreated into the darkness beyond our solar system, I understood that we had done something far greater than simply survive. We had proven, beyond any possible doubt, that humanity would not be erased quietly from the galaxy's history. Grace's ship drifted alongside mine as the battlefield finally fell silent, her voice quiet and heavy with exhaustion over the comm channel. "We won," she said softly. I still cannot quite believe it. I stared out at the drifting wreckage scattered endlessly across the darkness surrounding us, thinking of everyone we had lost to secure this fragile, hard-fought victory. "We won," I agreed quietly, "but I do not think either of us will ever forget what it cost." As recovery crews began the long, painful process of searching the wreckage for survivors, word already began spreading across our fleet that the retreating alien ships were broadcasting something new toward the edge of the system, a signal our translators were only just beginning to decode. Whatever it meant, I understood deep in my exhausted bones that the galaxy beyond our solar system would never look at humanity the same way again. 3 months passed before the Coalition sent anyone to speak with us directly, and in that time our fleet worked to repair what remained of our battered ships, while the surface of Earth slowly came to understand exactly how close humanity had come to disappearing entirely. Governments that once argued endlessly about how to respond to a hypothetical threat now moved quickly to support the Deadlock program openly, funding new shipyards and training programs to prepare for whatever might come next. The secrecy that had protected us for so long was no longer necessary, and in its place came something I never expected to witness in my lifetime, an entire planet united behind a single shared purpose. I spent much of those 3 months working alongside Grace and the surviving members of our fleet, helping train new pilots who had volunteered in numbers far exceeding anything our recruiters had planned for. Commander Price, promoted to oversee the entire expansion effort, often reminded us during training sessions that the peace we now enjoyed remained fragile, built upon a single battle that had cost us more than any of us wished to remember. It was during one of these training sessions that word arrived of a small, unarmed vessel approaching the edge of our solar system, broadcasting a signal our translators had finally learned to decode. Captain Bennett gathered the senior officers together immediately, her expression a careful mixture of caution and quiet curiosity. "They are requesting formal communication," she said, studying the translated message displayed before her. "Not surrender, not another attack. They wish to speak." The following days passed in tense anticipation as diplomats hastily assembled from across Earth's governments, prepared for what would become humanity's first true conversation with a species from beyond our solar system. I was assigned, along with Grace and Commander Price, to escort the alien vessel toward a secure meeting point near the edge of our defensive perimeter, a decision that filled me with a strange mixture of pride and lingering unease. The alien delegate who eventually stepped forward to address our diplomats introduced itself through a translator device as Vos Carol Ethon, a senior representative from the Coalition Assembly that had originally condemned Earth to destruction. Its species resembled tall, slender beings with pale gray skin and deep-set eyes that studied our own representatives with obvious wariness. "We came expecting to remove a minor threat before it could grow into something dangerous," Vos Carol Ethan said through the translator, its voice carrying a strange, layered quality. "Instead, we discovered a species that had already grown into exactly the threat we feared, quietly, patiently, without ever revealing itself until the moment it was needed." Captain Bennett, standing at the head of our delegation, responded with the same calm steadiness that had guided our fleet through every battle leading to this moment. "We did not build our fleet because we wanted conflict," she said. "We built it because our own history taught us that peace offered without strength rarely survives contact with those unwilling to respect it. We would have preferred this conversation to begin very differently." The alien representative studied her for a long, silent moment before responding. "The Coalition Assembly has reconsidered its judgment," it said finally. "Earth will not be marked for destruction again. Instead, our leadership wishes to understand exactly what kind of species we so nearly destroyed through our own assumptions." I stood quietly near the edge of the meeting, listening to the careful, measured negotiations that followed over the next several hours, watching history unfold in real time as humanity transitioned from a condemned species hiding in the shadows to a recognized, if deeply feared, presence within the wider galaxy. In the weeks that followed, more delegations arrived from other coalition worlds, each one approaching with the same cautious curiosity, clearly attempting to understand exactly what had allowed a species judged so dangerous to not only survive but decisively defeat every fleet sent against it. Some approached with genuine interest in establishing peaceful relations. Others, I suspected, approached simply to gather intelligence, still uncertain whether humanity represented an opportunity or a threat that might one day need to be addressed again. Commander Price addressed our fleet directly during a gathering held shortly after the final coalition delegation departed, his expression carrying the weight of everything we had endured together. "We are no longer hidden," he said. "We are no longer unknown. But I want every one of you to understand something important. The galaxy has not become safer simply because we survived. It has simply learned that we are not an easy target. That knowledge alone will shape how we are treated moving forward, for better and for worse." Grace stood beside me during that gathering, her expression thoughtful as she considered his words. "Do you think this is truly over?" she asked quietly. I considered the question carefully before answering, thinking of everything we had witnessed and lost throughout the past several months. I do not think anything is ever truly over, I said. But I think we proved something important. We proved that Earth is no longer something the galaxy can simply erase whenever it decides we are inconvenient. In the months that followed, humanity's relationship with the wider galaxy grew slowly, carefully, built upon a foundation of mutual caution rather than immediate trust. New alliances formed with certain coalition worlds who saw value in maintaining peaceful relations with a species capable of defeating fleets many times its own size. Other worlds remained distant, clearly still uncertain how to interpret humanity's sudden and violent introduction to galactic society. I often found myself standing near the observation deck of our rebuilt fleet headquarters, staring out at the stars that had once seemed so distant and unknowable, now understanding that countless other worlds existed among them, each one watching Earth with a mixture of curiosity, respect, and lingering caution. Captain Bennett, now recognized across multiple worlds as one of the architects of humanity's improbable survival, once told me during a quiet moment following one of our many diplomatic gatherings that she believed our greatest victory was not the battles we had won, but the simple fact that we had forced an ancient and powerful civilization to reconsider everything it believed about judging entire species based on assumptions alone. They believed we were too dangerous to exist, she said. They were not entirely wrong, but they never understood that the same qualities that made us dangerous also made us capable of protecting everything worth protecting. I often thought back to that quiet, terrifying moment before our very first battle began, when none of us truly knew whether the ships we had built in secret would prove enough to save our entire species from a war we never asked for. Looking back now, I understood that everything we had endured, every loss, every desperate victory, had led toward this fragile, uncertain peace we now found ourselves navigating. Earth was no longer a hidden, unknown world drifting quietly at the edge of galactic awareness. We had become something else entirely, a species respected and feared in equal measure, a name now spoken carefully across star systems that had once dismissed us as nothing more than a minor, forgettable threat to be quietly erased. Grace once asked me, during one of our final training sessions together, before she was reassigned to help oversee humanity's growing diplomatic fleet, whether I believed we had truly earned our place among the wider galaxy, or whether we had simply forced our way into a position none of the older civilizations were prepared to grant us willingly. I considered her question carefully, thinking of everyone we had lost, everyone who had sacrificed everything so the rest of us might stand here now, discussing humanity's uncertain but undeniable future among the stars. I do not think it matters how we earned our place, I finally answered. What matters is that we are still here, still standing, still ready for whatever comes next. That alone is more than the galaxy ever expected from us. As our conversation ended, and I looked out once more toward the endless stretch of stars surrounding our small, fiercely protected world, I understood with complete certainty that humanity's story among the galaxy had only just begun. We had been marked for destruction, judged unworthy of a future beyond our own solar system. Instead, through sacrifice, unity, and a willingness to fight for everything worth protecting, we had rewritten that judgment entirely. The galaxy had once decided humanity's fate without ever hearing our voice. It would never make that mistake again.